The UFC is back this Saturday from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, for a UFC Fight Night card. I thought this was going to be on ABC because it's early in the morning, but I guess not. On ESPN Plus, we have got the return of the former two-time middleweight champion Israel Adesanya, and he returns against Nassourdine Imavov, a big-time co-main event, as well as we have got Shara Magomedov taking on Michael Venom Page in a huge feature bout as well in the heavyweight division between the Russian Sergey Pavlovich taking on Jairzinho Rozenstruik. We've got 12 fights on this card since the Ikram Aliskerov-Andrea Muniz fight just got dropped. I'm recording this video on Saturday night. So if Aliskerov gets a replacement, I guess I'll update the description or leave a comment on Aliskerov's new fight. If Aliskerov does get a fight, expect him to win. I don't think they want Aliskerov losing in Saudi Arabia because of the last time he fought out there. I thought he was going to beat up on Muniz. So I'd expect Aliskerov, if they give him a fight, he'll get a guy, a local from UAE Warriors or whatnot, and he'll likely beat his ass. But if it's, if he does get a fight, I guess I'll leave a prediction in the description down below, or the comment section, one of the two. And folks, if you haven't yet though, make sure that subscribe button down below for some more weekly MMA predictions here on the channel. We are hitting on above an 82% rate this year on all MMA predictions. I get it's only been 3 cards, but that's how good we've been so far this year for the 3 first MMA cards of the year. Just this weekend, we went 9-1 with PFL. And also, guys, make sure to leave a like as well. Just kidding. You guys got clickbaited. We're actually only talking about the Global Fight League today. No, I'm joking. What is this, though? Like, why is Tony Ferguson an Avenger? Why does Fabricio Verdum have the Green Lantern costume on? What is going on with the Global Fight League? Legitimately, I don't know what's happening with that. But the draft happened. It is what it is. We will do Global Fight League predictions, guys, later this year. So there's that. Anyways, make sure to join us daily for our college basketball best bets. Those are every single day on the channel, along with our NBA predictions that are daily on the channel as well. Okay, let's get into the first of these 12 fights tonight in the UFC. We start things off in the lightweight division with a fight between Balaji Oki and Abdul Karim Al-Selwady in this one. Oki was a replacement for the original fight for Al-Selwady, which was Jordan Levitt, the Monkey King. Here comes the Zulu Warrior out of Belgium and Balaji Oki. I think it actually is a tougher fight for Al-Selwady now. I think it is. I mean, for as good as Jordan Levitt is on the ground, he is very one-dimensional on the ground. Now you got to deal with a guy in Oki who's a dynamic fighter, yes, a better striker, but it's a complete change in opponent. Again, if you're fighting Jordan Levitt, you're dealing with a primary grappler, a guy who's just going to try to clinch with you, going to try to take you down. Now you get Oki, a guy who can grapple some, but obviously known for the striking. So far in the Zulu Warriors UFC career, 1-1 with the loss of Chris Duncan in his last one by guillotine choke in the first round. That's rough. But the fight before that, is a win over Timmy Komba by split decision in February of last year. For Al-Selwady, an 0-1 fighter in the UFC, his only fight being a loss to Louis Radzhabov, losing the fight by 3rd round TKO. He's the guy who beat George Hardwick on the Contender back in 2023. And that was a good win, but Al-Selwady, other than that victory over Hardwick, hasn't really been all that great, if we're being honest. Like, Al-Selwady's a guy, he's 15-4. 4 of those losses are by knockout, and I think he's extremely hittable, as we have seen, obviously. And again, it's a complete change in opponent. Again, originally Al-Selwady preparing for a grappler in Jordan Levitt, a guy who's honestly not going to hurt you on the feet, and now you get a guy who's very dangerous on the feet. Sure, again, there is a pathway to beat Oki on the ground, but I don't think Al-Selwady's the type of guy to completely exploit that, shoot for the legs, and dominate on the ground. I don't expect Al-Selwady to do that. I think, again, if anything, Al-Selwady, the 4-7 May product, is going to get stuck in a striking battle with Oki, and I don't think that's going to go too well for him. Oki is the bigger lightweight. He is 2 inches taller than Al-Selwady. He's got a 5-inch reach advantage on Al-Selwady as well, 4-inch reach advantage, but still, he's got the reach advantage. Oki is the all-around just bigger fighter, and I do think he's the better striker as well. I like Balaji Oki to win this fight. I know he lost to Chris Duncan in his last one, but I don't think Al-Selwady, again, is able to exploit that lack of a ground game that Oki does have. So I do like Oki in a striking fight. I don't think this one really hits the mat, and I think the Belgian fighter here in Balaji Oki beats Abdul Karim Al-Selwady by 2nd round TKO. I think he keeps his distance, and eventually he finds that big shot. Again, he didn't get that finish in the Timmy Kwamba fight, but was able to get a finish in the Contender Series back in 2023 for Dylan Salvador. I think we see a a second-round finish for Balaji Oki. I think he picks up his second win in the UFC to kick off this card here against Abdul Karim Al-Selwady. Let's move on to our next one as we move to the heavyweight division. We have got Hamdi Abdelwahab from Egypt taking on Jamal Pogues. It is Abdelwahab's second fight in the UFC in 3 years, making his UFC debut back at UFC 277, Pena versus Nunes 2 in July of 2022, in a fight that he originally beat Dante Almeida, but ended up popping for steroids after the fact, or performance-enhancing drugs. Abdelwahab got suspended for 2 years. I'm surprised the UFC kept him around because the signing originally of Abdelwahab was just odd. He is a 3-0 professional mixed martial arts fighter. He came from Gamebred MMA, wins 3 fights in Icon FC, Freedom Fight Night, and again in Icon FC, and then beats Dante Almeida. Fight gets overturned. Now he hasn't fought in 2.5 years. There's too many question marks around Abdelwahab for me to pick him, I'll be honest with you here. It's not like he's old now, he's 32, but again, 2.5 years off, I don't know what he's going to be, and we gotta talk about it too, the reason he's suspended, I don't know what he's going to be without now those performance-enhancing drugs, let's just be honest. For Jamal Pogues, this is a guy who's 11-4 in his MMA career, 2-1 in the UFC, comes in, beats Josh Parisian in his first fight by unanimous decision, then goes out and loses to Mick Parkin, but Parkin's a guy who is, quickly rising the ranks in the heavyweight division and likely to be in the top 15 fairly quickly, and then a big victory for Pogues in his last one, beating Thomas Peterson by unanimous decision. Peterson's a guy we're going to see later on in this card, don't know how he's higher on the card than Jamal Pogues, but it is what it is. Pogues wins that fight by unanimous decision, and Pogues, again, he's just one of those heavyweight strikers that, keeps his distance, is able to touch you up. He's not going to get finishes, let's just be honest. The last time he got a finish in an MMA fight was back in 2019, against an 0-0 Casey Sanders. Jamal Pogues, I don't know if he's ever going to get to this level. Obviously, he's not. I don't think Jamal Pogues is ever going to get to championship level, but he reminds me of the end of career Andrei Arlovsky stage. Actually, no, Arlovsky's fighting again. He's in the Global Fight League. We might watch him lose to Robles de Spain soon. Like, that's the type of fight that might happen soon. Or, like, he might go fight, I don't know, Frank Mir. Why is Frank Mir fighting? It's 2025. Bro, oh, man. I'm surprised Chuck Liddell's not in the league. Guys, very quick. Can we please get Dylan Dennis versus Tony Ferguson in the league? I would be so hyped for that. Because Tony would actually win, but if he doesn't win, oh my goodness, imagine if Dylan Dennis beat Tony Ferguson. Actually, that's really sad to think about. I'm here for it. Guys, people are hating on the Global Fight League. Guys, you don't understand. The amount of funny content we're going to get up the Global Fight League is insane. Guys, I never thought I'd watch Luke Rockhold. Actually, no. Well, he's still fighting Karate Combat and whatnot, or Bare Knuckle. I never thought I'd see Frank Mir fight again. Like, I didn't think I'd see, who else is a random guy that's in the Global Fight League? Benson Henderson? Like, I mean, all these guys, like, there's going to be some stupid fights in this. Guys, Tony Ferguson is going to scrap with Dylan Dennis and someone like that. Like, guys, Yoel Romero's in this. This is going to be hilarious. I don't know how long it's going to last, but as long as we get one season, I'm all here for it. I'm all here just for 1 year of the Global Fight League. I just want to see where it goes. All right, I went off that tangent because I said Jamal Pogues is kind of like Andrei Arlovsky. Well, he's kind of like Andrei Arlovsky to the point where he can't finish anyone. He's a decent striker, but a guy who's just going to try to touch you up the entire fight. He can wrestle occasionally as well. That's how he beat Josh Parisian back in 2023. I don't know what Abdelwahab is going to be going into this one. I mean, he's a guy who can wrestle, and he wrestled Dante Almeida fairly well. It's how he ended up winning that third round against Dante Almeida in their fight again in Dallas at 277, but I just don't know how effective Abdelwahab's going to be coming off the 2 years off, 2.5 years off. On paper, Jamal Pogues should have a striking advantage, and I think he should be able to wear on Abdelwahab as the fight goes on. I think he should be able to out-wrestle Hamdi Abdelwahab as well, but I wouldn't get close to betting on this fight. You get Jamal Pogues as a slight favorite right now. Actually, it's even. -110, -110. I think Jamal Pogues started the week as a slight favorite. I'd stay away. I'd completely stay away, but I will say the Stormtrooper Jamal Pogues wins the fight by unanimous decision. Again, I think it's his striking on the outside. He does have a 4-inch reach, and I think it's going to be the defensive wrestling out of Jamal Pogues that's going to win him this fight, but I completely stay away. Next up, we go to the featherweight division. We've got a fight here between Bogdan Grad and Lucas Alexander. I'll be honest, I kind of forgot Lucas Alexander was still in the UFC. This is a guy who's 8-4 professionally, taking on Bogdan Grad, making his UFC debut, coming off of his second fight in the Contender Series, the first win that he got on the Contender Series just last year. And he's taking on, again, Lucas Alexander, guys 1-2 in the UFC. His win is Stephen Ocho Peterson. He looked really good in that fight, but let's just call it how it is. Ocho Peterson was washed going into that fight. He was 19-10 as a whole. That was his last professional mixed martial arts fight. Maybe the Global Fight League will call him. I don't know. But yeah, it was the end of the run for Stephen Ocho Peterson. Now Alexander just beat the brakes off him. But Alexander, again, the loss of Joe Anderson Brito in his UFC debut, don't care. That's not a bad loss. He came into the UFC after beating a former UFC name in Jacob Kilburn and Anthony Pettis FC. I believe that was a co-main event for Anthony Pettis FC. It was an injury for Kilburn. That's how Alexander won. Regardless, though, the last loss is really bad. He misses weight and then he gets knocked out by Jekka Sarige. I just call him Jekka. It's a horrible loss. Let's just be honest, guys. Jekka's a guy who looked, I thought, in his first couple fights his first fight in the UFC, out of place, and that was against Anshul Jubli. I don't think Anshul Jubli's really a UFC fighter. He just lost to Mike Breeden. So then Jekka beats Lucas Alexander, and then he gets triangle armbarred by Weston Wilson in the first round in his next fight. So the Indonesian fighter in Jekka, not that great. Don't know if the UFC is going to bring him back, but that kind of puts it in perspective where I think Lucas Alexander stands in the UFC. I don't think he's that talented. I'll just be honest with you. Jekka drops him fairly quickly. Joe Anderson Brito finds a takedown fairly quickly. Bogdan Grad is a volume striker. He's going to try and go in there and pressure you, but he does have a lot of explosiveness. Picked up a flying knee knockout two fights prior to fighting on the Contender Series this year. Was able to sync up a guillotine choke to punch his ticket into the Contender Series this year in 2024. And he's just a long, lanky fighter who is going to throw different things at you, a bunch of spinning attacks. He's going to throw his kicks at you. And I think it's a difficult challenge for Lucas Alexander because as a whole, I do think Bogdan Grad is the way more polished striker. I do think the Romanian fighter now training out of Austria is going to be well equipped to beat Lucas Alexander in this spot. I think we see primarily a striking fight. I think Bogdan Grad really dominates the fight on the feet. This is just a matter of do we think Grad gets a finish or not. I'm going to say yes. I think Bogdan Grad does get Lucas Alexander out of there in the first round. We're going first round knockout victory here for the Austrian. Again, I just think Alexander isn't that great. We saw him get dropped and lose in the first round against Jekka. My camera is complete. What is going on here? My God. There we go. Lucas Alexander, we saw him get dropped really early in his last fight. Who knows what his chin is at as a whole? I mean, he's only got knocked out once in his career, but I don't know. Just Alexander's not that impressive. He's 8-4 as a whole. I think they're trying to get him out of here. Bogdan Grad, again, a guy who split on the Contender Series, lost his fight in 2023 by knockout to Tom Nolan, and then obviously beat Michael as well in his last fight by split decision. I think Grad's the better fighter here. If he does have to go to his wrestling, I think he can beat Lucas Alexander down there as well. I'm just not impressed with Alexander at all, and I think Bogdan Grad dominates the fight. Give me the Austrian, Bogdan the Unleashed Grad, to knock out Lucas Alexander in the first round to pick up his first win in the UFC. Let's move on to our next one, to the flyweight division. We have the former title challenger, not at 125, but at 135, in Mayra Bueno Silva taking on Jasmine Jasudavicius. Yes, Mayra Bueno Silva 2 fights ago was in a world championship fight, in a fight that she was favored in a fight that a lot of people picked her to win, myself included, I'll be honest with you. That was a dark time in the UFC's bantamweight division. For as much as we want to hate on Juliana Pena, I don't hate on Juliana, but as much as people want to hate on Juliana Pena, guys, at least the division's actually interesting again. Because she knows how to sell a fight. Whether you like it or not, you're going to watch because you want to see Juliana Pena lose to Kayla Harrison when they fight probably International Fight Week, I think. They'll probably be the co-main event. Imagine if Mayra Bueno Silva got the belt. Just imagine. So, Myra's lost back-to-back fights now. The Raquel Pennington loss, obviously, in the championship fight, ran out of gas. And then the Macy Chasson fight, UFC 303, just one of the worst cuts I've ever seen, right above the eye, ends up stopping the fight, and Chasson gets it by doctor's stoppage. I don't know why Mayra Bueno Silva feels the need to go back down to 25. It's not like she was, that bad at 135. She loses to, again, now the former champion in Raquel Pennington. And then, yes, she was losing to Chasson, but the fight was close. And, all right, just get stopped because of a cut. Now you want to go down to take on a fighter who's rising the ranks in Jasmine Jasudavicius, but who's 35 years old, 2 years older than Mayra Bueno Silva. But a fighter in Jasudavicius that has beat every opponent that's been put in front of her, except for Tracy Cortez, who only has one loss, which is to Rose Namajunas, and Natalia Silva, who's undefeated, who I think potentially is going to win the championship someday. So it's a very tough stylistic fight, for Mayra Bueno Silva. You're going to get Jasudavicius, who knows how to wrestle. She knows how to maintain top position, and I don't think she's going to get caught in any submission that Mayra Bueno Silva is going to throw up. Mayra Bueno Silva, very capable of finding those submissions too, right? The Holly Holm guillotine choke, the win by knee bar over Lena Landsberg, the armbar victory against Stephanie Yeager, Jillian Robertson armbar keeps on aging better and better. I know that fight was back in 2018, but still, Mayra Bueno Silva has submissions that she can throw up off of her back. But Jasudavicius is a pressure-heavy wrestler. She's going to maintain top positioning, and I don't think she's going to put herself in a bad situation where she's getting subbed off of her back. Now, I am a little bit... I don't know. I'm surprised the odds are where they're at. I think Jasudavicius wins this fight, but I don't think she should be anywhere near a minus 225 favorite. I don't think it should be that crazy for Jasudavicius. Mayra is plus 185. Okay. I think there's value at Mayra Bueno Silva, but personally, I don't think she wins. I think she's going to need a submission to win this fight. On the feet, Mayra Bueno Silva is probably the better striker. Jasudavicius has not been impressive on the feet in her UFC career. She was beating up Priscilla Cachoeira on the feet, but anyone can do that, right? Jasudavicius has found her stride in the UFC by wrestling and finding submissions, right? We saw Tracy Cortez beat her up on the feet as well, right? So I think that's where Mayra has an advantage, but I think really where Jasudavicius takes this fight over, where she does in most of her fights, is finding takedowns and just maintaining top positioning and obviously riding out that control time for points. That's kind of how I expect this fight to go. On Tapology, 77% of voters going with Jasudavicius, 23% of voters, going with Mayra Bueno Silva. Makes sense. It really does. Jasudavicius about to turn 36. But she hasn't shown any signs of slowing yet. If there's ever going to be a time where Jasudavicius, I guess, will make a title run, it has to be now. And they're giving her a former title challenger, which, if John Anik is to speak for the last card, he was talking very highly of Mayra Bueno Silva as a former title challenger. I guess the UFC brass thinks highly of Mayra still because she did fight for the belt, once upon a time. Jasudavicius is ranked 12th in the weight class. Got to fight up eventually. If they want to book her right, give her Viviane Araújo. Araújo ranked 9, very beatable fighter in the top 10. I don't know. But in this one, give me Jasmine Jasudavicius to out-wrestle Mayra Bueno Silva. I don't think Silva is able to find a submission off of her back, and I think Jasudavicius is able to take the fight down. So give me Jasmine Jasudavicius to beat Mayra Bueno Silva, and she will get it done by unanimous decision. Going to the lightweight division, we get Mike Davis taking on Ziam. Again, it's Mike Davis who we see once a year. I'm glad he's fighting. I like watching Mike Davis fight, but let's just be honest, guys, he's not active enough. Mike Davis is now 32 years old. He's only had 5 fights in the UFC, and he's been signed with the promotion since 2019. So if you're counting at home, this is his 6th year in the promotion, and this is his 6th fight. And he's 4-1 in the UFC, and his only losses to Gilbert Burns back in 2019. The guy just needs to fight more. Win over Thomas Gifford, win over Mason Jones, very good fight back in 2021, a win over Slava Claus, and then a arm triangle submission victory over Natan Levy. He was booked to fight Drew Dober in the summer of 2024, but he tore his bicep, and now here he is in Saudi Arabia taking on Ziam. I am very shocked on Tapology. Ziam is a 66% to 34% favorite. I don't know. Really? Did we forget how good Mike Davis is? That really shocks me, I'll be honest with you. That's really surprising. Ziam, all right, 4-fight winning streak. Michael Figlak, Jai Herbert, Claudio Puelles by split decision. The reason why people are taking Ziam is because of his knockout victory over Matt Frivola, which is a good win. I like Frivola, but I think Matt Frivola was always a little bit overrated. Let's just be honest with ourselves. The fan base really got behind him. He knocked out Drew Dober, whose chin's a little bit questionable at times. And that's really his only big victory. Frivola is 5-5-1 in the UFC. His wins are Jalen Turner, which is a good win, but Luis Pena, Hernaro Valdez, and Otman Zaitar. I don't know. Again, don't forget, Frivola got knocked down in 7 seconds by Terrence McKinney. You know who else got finished in the first round by Terrence McKinney? Ziam. Now, McKinney's fighting in the next fight. We'll get to that one later, very soon, obviously. But I'm not sold on Ziam still. 4 straight wins, yeah. The knockout win over Frevola, great victory, good fight, really good fight for Ziam. But again, it's like, did we forget how good Mike Davis is? This guy's really good. Davis is the complete package in there, let's just be honest. He can wrestle, he can strike. Like, if he's trying to get out of there quickly, find a guy, exploit the weaknesses in the ground. He knocked down Natan Levy, found his way to a submission, got him with the arm triangle. If you want a wrestling heavy approach, again, that's what he did against Slava Claus. 9 takedowns in that fight, ended up winning a unanimous decision fairly easily. The Mason Jones victory, that was a war. Fight of the night back on a Wednesday night card, or actually Wednesday morning card with the UFC in early 2021 in Abu Dhabi on the Chiesa Magni card. It was the fight of the night. I remember I was on Zoom. I had Zoom class watching Mike Davis fight Mason Jones at 8 in the morning. It was great. It was a war, and Mike Davis ended up beating a highly touted prospect at the time in Mason Jones, who was undefeated. And he's got the power to finish you as well, Thomas Gifford. I mean, every single Mike Davis victory in the UFC has been very impressive, and he's done every single one in different ways. I get it, we're kind of high on Ziam right now, but I think Vegas got these odds kind of right. Minus 140 for Mike Davis, plus 120 for the Frenchman, and fair Ziam. That's fine. Again, you can have your 66% on Topology. I don't agree with that at all. I don't. I think Davis is the complete package. I think Davis has multiple different ways to win this fight. And I think the easiest way he has to win this one's through wrestling. I think Mike Davis has the advantage down there. Again, watch the Slava Claus fight. I get it. Borshev is not a good wrestler. He's not. And that's the way you beat Borshev. But again, Mike Davis isn't afraid to exploit his opponent's wrestling game or a weakness that they have, because again, Davis can do it all. Again, I'm hyping up Mike Davis a lot, but he's a good fighter. You just don't hear about him obviously being talked about as an elite guy or at least a top 15 guy. It's just because he's not active enough. And obviously he just got injured before he potentially had a big time fight against Drew Dober that I think Davis probably would have gone out there and won. But Davis, again, he doesn't need to stand and bang with Ziam. He can take him down and try to pick up that submission. Again, guys, Terrence McKinney got Ziam down, or took his back right away and submitted him. We saw Claudio Puelles have a lot of success grappling and wrestling with Ziam. The reason why Puelles didn't win the fight is because he's literally incapable of doing anything else in a fight. Well, Davis doesn't have that problem. So I do think, hell, Jamie Mullerkey was able to wrestle Ziam a lot as well. I think that's a clear pathway for Mike Davis in this fight. And it's not like he's incapable of striking with Ziam as well. I wouldn't mind Mike Davis's odds in a pure striking battle with Ziam. I think there's just too many pathways for Davis to win the fight. The guy's the complete package. His only loss in the UFC is to Gilbert Burns. It's just, again, people don't know of Mike Davis because he fights once a year. So if we can get some activity, we can start putting more hype around this guy. Give me Fusion XL Zone and Mike Davis to go out here and just put a beating on Ferret Ziam, doing it all, wrestling, striking. I think Mike Davis gives you one of those y'all must have forgot performances and beats the Frenchman Ferret Ziam by unanimous decision. We are staying in the lightweight division for our next one. We have got Terrence McKinney taking on the Bosnian training out of Denmark and Damir Hadzovic. Guys, I like Terrence McKinney. I do. But you know what this fight is. This fight is to get Terrence McKinney a victory because he's lost a fight. I mean, it's just McKinney's a guy that the UFC wants to keep around for good reason. He's a fun fighter. He's always going to give you a war. He's going, he's like the new Joe Lozon. Seriously, he's a prelim guy, undercard guy, but a guy who can always give you a fun fight, and you're going to look forward to watching him fight. What this is a reset. They need McKinney to win one, so they give him future Global Fight League fighter Damir Hadzovic. Let's just be honest. This is all this is. Damir Hadzovic is 38 years old, coming off a loss in 2022 to Mark DeCasey, in a fight where DeCasey took him down at will. Terrence McKinney has got multiple pathways to victory in this fight. The easiest will likely be by grappling Damir Hadzovic. I think that's right there for the taking for Terrence McKinney. It's just a matter of how he plays this, though. I don't know. I think the safer pick, again, if you're picking an outcome, I guess is TKO. That's what my official prediction will be, Terrence McKinney by TKO, because, again, he could still get the TKO on the ground. And I don't know if McKinney's going to try to go out there and get a takedown on Hadzovic, or he's going to try to find a knockout. Either or, I think McKinney finishes the fight in the first round. Again, regardless of if it's a grappling finish or a submission, obviously, or if it's a TKO on the feet or on the ground. I don't know. Again, I think McKinney does get it done in the first round, though. He's taking on a 38-year-old fighter, Damir Hadzovic. The one spot where I am concerned about McKinney is if he stands and bangs with Hadzovic, but that's literally every single Terrence McKinney fight. Again, McKinney has 7 losses on his career. They're all by finish, 2 of them by submission, and wait for it, 5 of them by knockout. It's brutal. The last loss, obviously, a 37-second knockout loss in St. Louis against Esteban Ribovic. That was brutal. But before that, though, right, back-to-back victories over Mike Breeden and Brandon Marat. Again, guys who aren't really UFC caliber, but those are guys that McKinney can get out there really quickly, give you a fun finish, and get on out of there. This is exactly what the Damir Hadzovic fight is. What is Hadzovic going to look like at 38 years old after 2.5 years off? Exactly. He hasn't fought in that long, or 1.5 years, but still, he's been off for an extended period of time. He's 38 years old. How is the chin holding up at this point in time? And I could easily see, again, McKinney finding a submission. I mean, that's what he did against Eric Gonzalez. He did that against Fair Ziam, a guy we just talked about as well. Like, again, McKinney is more than capable of submitting Damir Hadzovic. We will see. I think it's kind of a sure thing McKinney wins the fight. I think I'd be very surprised if McKinney can't beat Damir Hadzovic, because the UFC's throwing him a lob, they're giving him a layup. If McKinney can't win this fight, we got to start looking at, like what we're doing here, honestly. McKinney should head to the GFL if he can't win this fight. I'm gonna be honest with you, he should, because then he could just beat up like Tony Ferguson. No, actually, wait, he's no, Ferguson's fighting what, 70? Who's a washed 155 fighter they have? I'm blanking off the top of my head. There's someone, Benson Henderson there. I mean, it's just like, why is Benson Henderson fighting in 2025? Just, I don't know. But Tricky Pitbull's there too. He's not like completely washed, but has never been all that good. So we'll see what Tricky does. He's a 10th round pick for Team Sao Paulo. By the way, what happened to Vanderlei Silva? He was on the draft board, never got picked. I wanted to see Vanderlei fight. I want to see Vanderlei versus Yoel Romero in 2025. And what are we doing? Anyways, give me Terrence McKinney. This is a layup fight, and you know it. McKinney goes out there, knocks out Damir Hadzovic in the first round. If not, he submits him, but I'll go with the knockout. Give me Terrence McKinney, first round TKO win over the Bosnian in Damir Hadzovic. Next up, we go to the heavyweight division. It's Shamil Gaziev. Shamil Gaziev takes on the Minnesotan, I believe. Yes, in Thomas Peterson. I think Shamil Gaziev gets this. I think. Gaziev got exposed, obviously, last year when he fought Jairzinho Rozenstruik. They put him in a 5-round fight. A lot of people expected, myself included, I'll be honest, that was a bad pick. A lot of people expected Gaziev to win that fight. We thought he could go out there and just wrestle Rozenstruik because, yes, Rozenstruik had a past of not finding takedown, or he had a past of not stuffing takedowns, how the Alistair Overeem fight stands out. But then Gaziev goes out there, gets that takedown in the first round, and then completely just runs out of gas as the fight goes on. And obviously, Rozenstruik wins. Gaziev becomes the first fighter in UFC history to lose the fight due to exhaustion and just eating too many hamburgers before the fight. So Gaziev comes back, though. He wins a fight in the first round. Sorry, no, he didn't even win a first round knockout. That was the Budai fight, second round TKO. He beats Don'Tale Mayes by unanimous decision. And then what happens? The UFC ranks him. He's ranked 14th in the weight class. So I'm thinking to myself, is 265 that weak that Shamil Gaziev is number 14 in the world? But then you think about it, who's like actually behind Shamil Gaziev in the rankings? Well, Waldo Cortez Acosta? But I don't know if Salsa Boy is going down to 205 to fight Ryan Spann, or Spann's coming up to 265 to fight him. I've seen conflicting reports about that fight. I don't know. So then you think about it. All right, so say Cortez Acosta is going down to 205, which would be a stupid career decision too. But like if he does, because he's coming off a win over Robles to Spain. But say then who is next? Well, Mick Parkin, an actual talented fighter. But then after Mick Parkin, it's like, all right, Rodrigo Nascimento, Martin Budai, who's coming off a win over Arlovsky. Kendi Nzechukwu, who probably should be in the top 15 because that's how bad heavyweight is. Then Don'Tale Mayes. Like, guys, unranked heavyweight fighting is so ridiculously bad, and good on Thomas Peterson for getting this shot into the top 15, but I actually think he loses. I think so, because, guys, what Peterson's going to want to do is what Gaziev actually does fairly well, and you keep Gaziev out of that 5-round environment. He didn't look bad going 15 minutes with Don'Tale Mayes in his last fight, and I get it. Peterson went out there in his last fight, beat up Mohammed Usman, was able to out-wrestle Usman in that one, but primarily a striking fight, sure. Gaziev's not horrible on the feet. He's not good on the feet, but he's not horrible. I think Gaziev's able to hold his own. I think Gaziev's able to wrestle. That's what I expect to happen in this one. I think Gaziev wrestles Thomas Peterson, and I think he probably wins. Now, personally, I'd stay away from this fight. I think Gaziev's a big question mark literally everywhere. Because, again, he has only had 3 fights in the UFC. And he's already ranked, which is something. And Thomas Peterson's a guy who's 1-1 in the UFC. I forgot he lost to Jamal Pogues. Oh, God. He did lose to Jamal Pogues. No, Gaziev probably can't outstrike him then. If Jamal Pogues, I mean, low-level heavyweight fighting is so bad. It's getting to the point where, guys, this is a low-level heavyweight fight with a guy who's in the rankings. God, what happened to the sport I love? Guys, let's talk about the Global Fight League's heavyweight division. So, we've got big-time fighters like Junior Dos Santos, Robles de Spain, Bruno Capoloza, Fabricio Verdum, I forgot about him, Tanner Bozer, Alexei Oleinik's fighting, Todd Duffy, Frank Mir. Okay, I'm done looking at the Global Fight League's roster. I just need to refresh my memory of, great fighting going on this year in the Middle East. Give me Shamil Gaziev to beat Thomas Peterson by decision. Again, complete crapshoot. Gaziev should be nowhere near a -400 favorite. But you know what, guys? If Gaziev's that big of a favorite, Vegas knows something we don't. Okay, Gaziev should really be like a -200 favorite in this one. But if he's that big of a favorite, Vegas knows something we don't about this fight. Gaziev maybe actually is the 14th best heavyweight in the world, which is what the hell? You're telling me that there's only 13 guys at 265 pounds in the world right now who can beat Shamil Gaziev? Oh, UFC's in trouble. Oh, they're in trouble. They are in trouble. To the featherweight division. We go to Muhammad Naimov taking on Kyan Ofli in this fight. Ofli, the fighter who's fighting out of Melbourne, Australia, but from Turkey. I think it's an odd fight, I'll be honest with you. I think it's really weird that this is the fight that the UFC matched up. It's a main card spot. Okay, let's just keep it a buck here, guys. What is the UFC doing? They're getting Muhammad Naimov a win. Okay, this is the script for this fight. Naimov is supposed to win the fight. He's supposed to go out here and beat Kyan Ofli. I don't know how Ofli got this fight. He loses on the Ultimate Fighter finale to Marion Santos, where he gets knocked out in the second round, and then we turn him around, a good 5 months later, which is fine, but we turn him around against a guy, Muhammad Naimov, who's 3-1 in the promotion and hasn't been all that bad. I get it. He's coming off a loss in his last one to Felipe Lima, got caught in a rear naked choke. Didn't get caught. He just got submitted. But prior to that, Naimov was doing a decent job in the UFC, finishes Jamie Mullarkey in his first fight, beats Nathaniel Wood by unanimous decision, goes out there and beats Eric Silva by first round TKO, even though Eric Silva is just atrocious at fighting. And then, obviously, losing to Lima. What does Ofli offer Naimov that's going to be all that challenging to Naimov? It's going to be the submissions and the grappling that Ofli does have. He is very good on the ground. I mean, he's win to punch his ticket into the Ultimate Fighter finale show. Was a 31-second guillotine win. That's where his nickname's Genghis? Oh, because his name's Khan. Oh, that makes sense. I'm just going to start calling him Genghis Khan. That's where Genghis Khan's going to have somewhat of a pushback on Muhammad Naimov, is going to be with that grappling and because of the submission threat, I think. But I expect Naimov to... I don't even know if he will wrestle him here. He might. He might just try to strike with him. And honestly, it might not be the worst decision. I think Naimov probably wins a striking battle, though. Definitely wins a striking battle with Genghis Khan here. Yeah, I'm expecting Muhammad Naimov to outstrike him. But you know what the UFC's trying to do here, though? You get a guy from Tajikistan who, I'll be honest, I don't know if Tajikistan's all that close to Saudi Arabia. I think it is, right? Because that's like, correct me if I'm wrong, Tajikistan is one of the former Soviet states, right? I'm looking at a map right now. I think it is. Nope, it's not even, no, it's connected to Kazakhstan, which I believe is a former Soviet state. I think, or it's next to Kyrgyzstan. I think Tajikistan's a former... Okay, I just need to find where the hell Saudi Arabia is on a map right now. Wait. Okay, no, Tajikistan's not really next to Saudi Arabia, but it kind of is. It's in the Middle East, I think. Kind of. It shares a border with Afghanistan. Yeah. Okay. Well, anyways, my point being, the UFC's trying to get Naimov a victory. Okay? They're giving him a guy who lost the Ultimate Fighter, who got TKO'd in that fight, and they're just trying to get Naimov another knockout finish. That's what he did against Yogi Molarkey. He's 3-1 in the promotion. I think he goes out there and finds that finish. I'm going to take Muhammad Naimov to win by second round TKO here against Genghis Khan Ofli. Yes, give me Naimov by second round TKO. Oh, Ofli's from Turkey. Turkey's in the Middle East. Oh, that's kind of... Anyway, Naimov. Yeah, I'm just going to stop thinking about the script and say Naimov wins. The next fight was supposed to be Ikram Aliskerov, Andre Muniz. This fight's not happening. So, I mean, if it was going to happen, Aliskerov first round knockout. What does Muniz offer him on the feet? Literally nothing. Muniz is washed. I'm sorry. He is at 34. But anyways, we'll move on to our next one. To the bantamweight division, we go to Said Nurmagomedov taking on Vinicius Oliveira. Nurmagomedov, obviously, from Makhachkala, Russia, taking on Vinicius Oliveira, training out of Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil. Don't know where that is in Brazil, nor do I know where anything is in Brazil, so whatever. I think it's an extremely winnable fight for Vinicius Oliveira. Unlike a lot of the Nurmagomedovs, Said Nurmagomedov isn't totally unbeatable. Well, hey, Merab Dvalishvili, though, can beat any Nurmagomedov he wants. No, I'm kidding, but shout out to Merab. He's that guy. Said is probably the worst Nurmagomedov in the UFC/PFL. I mean, Abubakar is in the Global Fight League, and he kind of is not very good. He lost to Dwight Grant, I think, in the UFC, so he's probably the worst Nurmagomedov. Said, I'm not saying Said's bad, by the way, but I think Said's probably then the second worst Nurmagomedov in MMA right now. And this is the guy who's 7-2 in the UFC, so like that kind of shows you how great the Nurmagomedovs have been. Correct me if I'm wrong, Said isn't a direct relative to Khabib. I don't think he is. There's two different camps in Makhachkala. He's at the other one. He's at the one with Ankalaev, I think's at this one. No, he's at Dag Fighter in Makhachkala, Russia. Omar Yakhmedov, who's in the Global Fight League's in this. Magomedov's in this. Timur Valiev. Zabit Magomedsharipov is at this one. Okay, so it's this camp. Still, Said he's okay. He doesn't have the wrestling prowess that you'd expect out of some Makhachkalan fighters. That's not entirely what he does. He is a striker who can grapple and can catch you in subs. But he's more than willing to trade in striking exchanges. He's coming off of a submission victory over Munin Gafarov in the first round. But again, Said's usually not the one chasing takedowns in his fights. Hell, when he beat Sajakub Karamov, who I don't think Karamov's in the Global Fight League. Or I think I saw him. Because that's a guy who can actually win in the GFL. He's not an aging vet, but the thing is, again, Karamov should be able to beat a lot of those aging vets in that league. But Said, again, Karamov was the one trying to find takedowns in that one, and Said eventually caught him in a guillotine choke and won that. You look at his win over Douglas Silva de Andrade, that was a striking affair that Said ended up winning. The Cody Stamann victory was a guillotine choke win. Again, it's not always, though, and usually it's not Said chasing takedowns. So that creates for an interesting fight in this one because he's taking on Vinicius Oliveira, a guy who I don't think is going to chase a takedown at all here, and he's going to be more than willing to strike with Said Nurmagomedov. So what happens then? I think Oliveira actually wins this fight, if I'm being honest with you. I think he goes out here and outstrikes Said Nurmagomedov. Guys, they pushed Oliveira somewhat to the moon in his last fight, right? His first fight in the UFC, a flying knee knockout victory in the Apex over Bernardo Sopaj. Sopaj obviously recently coming off that victory over Ricky Tercios at the Intuit Dome, but a huge knockout victory for Vinicius Oliveira at the final seconds of that fight. And then they turn him around, International Fight Week, they give him an established name within kind of the top 15, top 20, in Ricky Simón. And what does he do? He beats Simón by unanimous decision, doesn't really let Simón take him down, and just outstrikes Simón the entire fight. And now you book him against Said Nurmagomedov. This is a dangerous fight for Said. I really think so. Because I don't think Said, again, I wouldn't trust Said offensively trying to wrestle anybody. I wouldn't. And I also wouldn't rely on Said to outstrike a guy like Vinicius Oliveira. Oliveira's striking has looked very good so far in the UFC. He's got power. He's got a lot of different angles he can hit you at. I think it's a really tough fight for Said Nurmagomedov, if I'm being honest with you. I'm taking Vinicius Oliveira to win this one. I think partially the reason why the odds are where they're at, why Said's a minus 200 favorite, Vinicius Oliveira coming back at you at about plus 165, I'll be honest, is because of the last name. You have, people whoever made these lines haven't actually watched these two guys' fights. And I'm not saying, again, I don't think Said is horrible. He's not. He's a good fighter. But I just think Vinicius Oliveira is really good as well. And stylistically, it's a very difficult fight for Nurmagomedov. How does he beat Vinicius Oliveira? He has to find that takedown. He has to engage in the wrestling. And then he's got to find the submission against a guy in Oliveira who has decent takedown defense, as we saw in the Ricky Simone fight. A guy who's really not going to throw out many submissions, but a very dangerous striker with a lot of power. I'm going to take Vinicius Oliveira to beat Said Nurmagomedov. We're going to go Oliveira second round TKO. I think Nurmagomedov is going to be kind of lost in the feet and won't really know what to do once he's not able to get the fight on the ground or see the success he's usually seen striking. Because what Nurmagomedov will do sometimes, again, he'll be winning on the feet, and then he'll just catch his opponent in an exchange, right? He'll catch him in the clinch, he'll find his way to a submission, he'll find the guillotine choke, or again, he'll win in a scramble and really, again, put something on his punches, like in the Mark Striegel victory back in 2020. I just don't know if those opportunities are going to present itself against a guy like Oliveira. I think Oliveira is really good, and I think he does find a way to TKO Said Nurmagomedov in this fight. Give me Vinicius Oliveira by second round TKO over Makachalazone Said Nurmagomedov. To the feature fight, in the heavyweight division, we have got Sergey Pavlovich taking on Biggie Boy Jairzinho Rozenstruik. What a fight! This is a very good fight on the main card of this fight night. And I think there's great value here on Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Hear me out, guys. Sergey Pavlovich. His two losses are against arguably two of the best guys in the world right now. Arguably the second and third best heavyweights on the planet right now are Pavlovich's last losses. Obviously, Aspinall being 2 and potentially Volkov being 3. I don't know where you want to put Jaiton Almeida, Cyril Gane, even though we all think Volkov beat Gane. Again, whatever. But one of those losses is to Aspinall, and the other one is to a very talented fighter and a top 5 guy in Drago, Alexander Volkov. But where does that really put Pavlovich? Is it just because, oh, he's losing to the best guys? Or is it Pavlovich was really never all that elite? I don't know. The fight that still doesn't make sense is the win over Curtis Blades, but that was always a really weird game plan for Curtis Blades in that fight. I don't know what he was thinking in that one. It was an Apex main event, April of 2023. Curtis Blades doesn't once try to take Pavlovich down, and that has been, again, a weak spot for Pavlovich. How we saw his loss to Alistair Overeem in China back in 2018. But still, I don't know really where to put Sergey Pavlovich, because yeah, he lost both those fights, but they're against good fighters, but Aspinall knocked him out in the first round, and Volkov just outclassed him on the feet. Volkov won every single round in that fight, and it was a pure striking fight. Now, I don't think Rozenstruik's on the same level as Volkov is, but Jairzinho's not bad, guys. Rozenstruik's more than capable on the feet. We saw his last fight where he dominates Tai Tuivasa, and I get it. That's Tai Tuivasa at this point in his career. Tuivasa's not all that great anymore, and somehow that was ruled a split decision. That's one of the other really bad split decisions we saw last year. I mean, that, like Sean Strickland, Paulo Costa was really bad too, but I don't know how a judge scored that fight for Tai Tuivasa. That was absolutely horrible. But Rozenstruik, we saw him piece up Shamil Gaziev on the feet. Again, I don't know where to put Gaziev. We had that whole discussion earlier about, oh, how good is Gaziev really? Because he's only 2-1 in the UFC, and the one time he got put in there with a top 10 guy, he got dominated by Rozenstruik, potentially maybe won one round, but that's it. Obviously, Gaziev. But guys, Rozenstruik's a more than capable kickboxer. So I don't know, again, if Pavlovich's rise was just he fought the right guys, because he really did, if we're being honest, guys. Shamil Abdurakhimov was very old. He was like 40. If that, I don't know. He's about 40, 38 years old when Pavlovich beat him and knocked him out. Derek Lewis, I mean, we can't count on Lewis to win fights anymore in 2024, 2025, or hell, that fight was in 2022. But Lewis, again, was kind of going down that downward slope in his career. Tai Tuivasa, same exact thing. And he fought Tai Tuivasa 3 months after he got knocked out by Cyril Gane. And then Curtis Blades, who didn't engage in any wrestling with him, and obviously that's what Curtis Blades does. Now, I'm not saying, oh, Biggie Boy is going to try to take down Pavlovich. Hell no. But it's going to be a kickboxing fight, and I don't know, man. If Sergey's not able to knock him out in the first round, I think this fight gets really dangerous for him. I think it does. Not because I think he's going to get knocked down in his own right. Pavlovich might find that, Rozenstruik might find that shot, but I think Rozenstruik's really able to out-volume Sergey Pavlovich and just put it on him. Use his kicks. Use that jab. I think that's going to make it really rough on Pavlovich to potentially win this fight, because I do think Rozenstruik, I think he's got a better gas tank. I've seen Rozenstruik be in fights at the end of 25 minutes. Well, kind of, but that was early in his career. But we've seen Rozenstruik be at the end of 3 rounds. Hell, the conditioning looked fine at the end of 20 minutes against Shamil Gaziev. So I'm not really concerned about Rozenstruik wearing out. I just think, again, if Rozenstruik's able to withstand the big power shots that Pavlovich will throw early in the fight, I actually think Rozenstruik's going to win, and that's why the pick here is Jairzinho Rozenstruik by decision. Again, I don't know if that's going to be all that common of a pick, and I get it, Rozenstruik's about to turn 37 years old, but he's really not showing it. He's looked much better in his last couple fights. Pavlovich is only 32, sure, but Pavlovich just hasn't looked like the same guy since the Aspinall fight. I get it was one fight, but he could not find any success against Volkov. And I get it, it's because Volkov, again, is a tough, he's a tough stylistic guy. He's a very big, long fighter who does hit hard. You wouldn't expect Volkov hits as hard as he does. And yes, Pavlovich, again, was a little outmatched in that one, and Rozenstruik is a smaller guy, but I don't know, if Rozenstruik, again, is just able to withstand those big power shots, the big hooks that Pavlovich throws, if Rozenstruik's able to get inside, if he's able to, again, get inside by using his kicks, I think it's going to be a tough fight for Pavlovich. I really think it's going to be. I don't know what Pavlovich we get coming off 2 straight losses. We've seen Rozenstruik respond from getting knocked out by Ngannou, getting knocked out by Alexander Volkov, and he's come back and won. Again, Rozenstruik really had to build himself back up to even get a shot back in the top 5, but this is exactly what that is. This is a shot back into the top 5 of the rankings for Jairzinho Rozenstruik, and I think the fighter from Suriname takes advantage of it. I'm going to take Jairzinho Rozenstruik to win the fight by decision. As long as Biggie Boy gets out the first round with Pavlovich, I think he beats him. I think he does. I might be just that down on Pavlovich's last performance. And I might be a little bit too high on Rozenstruik, but Rozenstruik has looked really good, and Rozenstruik is a very tough kickboxer to deal with. Again, this is a former world champion in kickboxing, I think. I think Rozenstruik's got that credential, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I believe, like back in 2012, he's a kickboxing world champion. He's good, man. He's good. And the gas tank, he's kind of figured out. He does still have power, sure, but what Rozenstruik has done as his career's gone on in the UFC and as he's risen the ranks and as he's gotten to the top 5, he hasn't completely just relied on his power. That's what he did very early in his UFC career, and he was kind of successful in doing that, obviously. Our Andre Arlovski victory, the knockout at the end of the fight against Alistair Overeem, right? He was just relying on his power, but now what Rozenstruik does, he doesn't always sit down on his shots. He, again, just tries to out-volume guys, and if the power shot presents itself, it will. So I kind of like Rozenstruik a lot in this fight here. I think it's great value for Biggie Boy. We're getting plus 240, which I think is crazy odds for Rozenstruik. I expect that line to come down a lot as the week goes on. I think this will close, honestly, around plus 160, maybe, plus 175, maybe. So get your value now while you can. I like Biggie Boy in this one. Give me Jairzinho Rozenstruik to win the fight over Sergey Pavlovich by unanimous decision. We go to our next one in the middleweight division. We have got Shara Magomedov taking on his toughest opponent to date in Michael Venom Page. It's a good fight. It's a really good fight, right? Magomedov, the favorite. Shara Bullet, the favorite. Michael Venom Page, actually the favorite on Tapology. Shara, undefeated 15-0. Taking on a guy here at MVP who is 1-1 in the UFC, obviously, so he's coming over from Bellator with a win over Kevin Holland and then a loss in his last one to Ian Machado Gary in a fight where he was just on his back the entire fight, or Ian Gary had his back because Gary was able to go to the well multiple times with the takedown. And ultimately, again, that's how Gary won. Who knows what would have happened if that fight was on the feet, but as much as we don't like Ian Gary, as much as Ian Gary is a little bit annoying sometimes, it was a very smart game plan out the Gary camp to just do that to Michael Venom Page. Very smart, right? That's the easiest way to victory against against Page. And eventually when Shara Magomedov fights into the top 15 and the top 10 of the rankings, these better guys are going to do that exact same thing to Shara Bullet. Originally, I was going to take Michael Venom Page in this fight. I was thinking, you know what? Stand-up fight. Shara hasn't been in there with the guy of the striking caliber of MVP before. It's just Shara. Sure, he'll throw the takedown this time, but MVP is just the way more skilled striker. He's more experienced. But then I did think to myself, hold on. The UFC makes a lot of money off of Shara Magomedov. They do. They make a crap ton of money off this guy. They are trying to build him right to get him into the top 15 and the top 10 of the rankings. How can we propel him even more? We give him MVP. We give him MVP, who's coming up from 170 pounds too. So MVP, I don't know if he's going to be undersized. He's not going to be undersized because this guy's 6'3", but MVP's not entirely used to fighting these guys at 185. When he was fighting in Bellator, Storley was for the welterweight championship. Did he ever fight at 85 in Bellator? I don't think he did. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but I don't remember when Michael Venom Page ever fought at 85. He's ranked 14th at welterweight right now, so that's something to it. So again, we're giving him a guy who's going up a weight to fight Shara. Shara is going to be just the bigger built guy, if that makes sense. Like, just like, I don't know, like Shara is just the bigger fighter. Like, just as you look at them, like, I don't know, without getting weird, I don't know how to like say this right. Magomedov is like, he's skinny. He's a skinny guy. So just, I think the power does go to Shara, obviously. And yeah, MVP gives you different angles and weird angles, sure. But is the UFC really, like, if they weren't confident that Shara could beat MVP, they wouldn't give Shara MVP. Because there are other fights in the top 15 at middleweight that will favor Shara more than MVP. If they thought MVP couldn't beat him, if that makes sense. If they thought MVP could beat Shara, right? They could have given Shara a guy like, might laugh, but Paulo Costa. Seriously, they could have given him a Paulo Costa to get him higher in the rankings. They could have given him a Jared Cannonier, but they settled on MVP. Sure, it's a fight that people have been wanting, but also it's the biggest name that the UFC can offer Shara that he can still beat right now. And again, the UFC is protecting Shara Magomedov because they want this guy in the top 5, obviously. They want money fights. Guys, there is a chance, I don't think they're going to do it because Shara's probably a win away, another win away, but Shara could fight Adesanya later this year. Seriously, if Adesanya, say, comes back in November, say, like, MSG card, main card, that pay-per-view, without giving away our next pick, whoops. Shara beats Jared Cannonier, we'll say, or beats the winner of Rodriguez versus Jared Cannonier. That's an Apex main event. The winner of that fight will be in the top 8. Boom, that's a fight that can get Shara at number 7. I think it's an extremely winnable fight, especially if it is Jared Cannonier just at Cannonier's age right now, even RoboCop too. And then boom, Shara can get into the top 5. How are you going to get him in the top 5? You give him the one guy who doesn't wrestle, Israel Adesanya. It's like how they built Pereira up at middleweight. It's like how they built Adesanya up at middleweight. Hell, Sean Strickland's going to be there too, even though I do think Strickland and Adesanya are both way too good for Shara. I don't think that Shara's going to be able to do his double back fist nonsense, which was really cool, I'm not going to lie, but I don't think that would work against those elite guys like Strickland and Adesanya, and obviously like Duplessis, Whitaker. We'll see what Whitaker is after the Hamzat fight, but regardless, right, I don't know if he could beat those type of guys. But in this fight, I will take him to beat Michael Venom Page. I will go with Shara Magomedov over MVP. I think Shara, again, will have a power advantage in this fight. I think the power that Shara puts on MVP is going to make Page a little hesitant to crash and, you know, present those unique angles that he will throw at his opponents. I just think, again, once he gets stung by a guy at 85 like Shara, who, regardless of what you think about Magomedov and who he's been fighting, it's undoubtable how hard this guy hits. I mean, the way, again, he was able to knock out Petrosyan. Again, the Tricoli victory wasn't great, and the Olashechek victory, whatever, but I mean, the Petrosyan victory showed, okay, this guy does have pop. And I think it's going to be a little bit different for Page coming up to 85 and feeling the power of a guy like Shara. Again, not like Shara has the most power at 185 pounds, but it's definitely there, obviously, and I think it's going to make it very tough on MVP to crash in. I think Shara wins a decision. I think he does. I think this fight, unfortunately, has capability of being really boring, because if MVP doesn't always engage, Shara is just going to feel like he can win on the outside, but he can feel like he can just win with that front punch, with his front hand, obviously with his jab. I don't know. It has the chance to be a very technical fight, which means it's not all that fun. We'll see. I just don't see either of these guys getting knocked out in this spot. I just don't. MVP, the only time he got knocked out was against Douglas Lima back in the day, and that was, obviously Lima kicked his legs out from underneath him and then boom, hit him with a big shot. I don't know. I don't see a knockout in this fight. I think Shara Magomedov does win the striking exchanges here. I get it. MVP is huge, like reach-wise, but I think Magomedov hits harder. I think he's the all-around stronger fighter. So give me Shara Magomedov to beat Michael Venom Page. We just got to think, guys, I don't want to always talk about the script, but is the UFC going to lose their cash cow to Michael Venom Page, who's 37 years old? No, they're hoping that Shara can build his name off of what MVP already has. So it's going to be Shara Magomedov in the co-main event to beat Michael Venom Page by unanimous decision. As we move on to our main event, in the middleweight division, obviously, the former two-time champion, the last style bender, Israel Adesanya, takes on Nassourdine Imavov. Interesting that Adesanya is back in there before Duplessis. Obviously, Dricus is back next week in a main event in Australia against the former champion and Sean Strickland in their rematch. But Adesanya returns to take on Nassourdine Imavov. Not the biggest money fight, let's just be honest. I mean, I know why Adesanya is in this spot. They want to get him in Saudi Arabia. That's, the Saudis obviously definitely want Adesanya on their card, and that's going to be a lot of money for the UFC if Izzy wins, obviously, and just Izzy's presence because he's one of their biggest stars. It is a tough fight, though. It is. I mean, Imavov, 28 years old, younger fighter, who can pressure you, can wrestle you. I think it's going to be a tough fight for Izzy. I think it is. Imavov coming off 3 straight victories, win over Brendan Allen in a co-main event in Paris. That was a bad fight. It was pretty boring, but Imavov wins it, obviously, by decision. Finishes Jared Cannonier in the 4th round of a main event in Louisville, Kentucky. Should the fight have been stopped? No, but there's a reason why Jared Cannonier is in that spot, because of the damage that Imavov was putting on him late in that fight. So obviously, again, we can't always just say, oh, the stoppage was bad. No, Imavov was doing damage in that fight, and then didn't pitch a shutout against Olidze, but pitched something very close to it in a main event spot in the Apex back in 2024. So Imavov's on a 3-fight losing streak. His last loss came to Sean Strickland in the first fight night card of 2023, but again, no shame in losing to a guy like Strickland, obviously, former champion. And that fight was actually at 205 pounds as well. We'll see if Imavov's able to figure out the Adesanya equation. It's tough to beat a guy like Izzy. It is. It's tough to beat him on the feet. Izzy, though, is coming off back-to-back losses. It is. He is, right? Adesanya's lost 3 out of 4 fights. Losing to Pereira, beating Pereira, losing to Strickland, losing to Duplessis. I thought Duplessis was beating Adesanya, if I'm being honest with you guys. I thought Dricus was winning that fight. I actually had Dricus up 2-1 going into the 4th round. A lot of people actually had it the other way around, which I didn't like. I had Dricus winning the 1st round. I had Dricus winning the 2nd round. I had Adesanya in the 3rd. The 4th round was kind of going Izzy's way, obviously, until Dricus found that big shot, kind of put Izzy down, then obviously followed with the takedown and took his back and submitted him right away. But I did have Dricus beating Adesanya on the feet in the 1st round. 2nd round, again, was a lot of wrestling that Dricus was able to do. In the 3rd round, again, Adesanya, that was his best round of the fight, obviously. We'll see. Again, Dricus is on a different level. Strickland is going to fight Dricus for the belt. So those are the 2 top guys in the weight class right now, not named Khamzat Chimaev, obviously. So where is Imavov, and is Imavov able to crack this puzzle? Personally, I don't think so. I don't think Imavov is going to be able to beat Adesanya. Now, if Izzy's not able to beat Imavov, let's just be honest, it's over for Izzy. I really think it is. But I do think Adesanya is able to keep his range. I think Adesanya is able to snap the jab out there. I think he's able to use the leg kicks. And again, Imavov has never fought anybody at the caliber of Israel Adesanya yet. And not many guys have. Again, he is a tough guy to put away. Adesanya, a tough guy to beat. Because, guys, Izzy's lost 4 fights in the UFC. Jan Blachowicz, world champion, up a weight class. Alex Pereira, world champion in 2 weight classes, Sean Strickland, world champion, and Dricus Duplessis, the current world champion. Again, those are tough guys. Is Nassourdine Imavov on the same level as those 4? I just don't think so. Now, Imavov's going to present a wrestling challenge. He's going to look at what Dricus was able to do deep in that fight, get that takedown, take the back quickly of Adesanya, and potentially find his way to a submission again for Imavov. He's going to see what Dricus did. And sure, that can happen. But I don't know if we can just rely on that Imavov wrestling. I think he's going to try. I think that's Imavov's best way to win, because on the feet, I do think Adesanya is able to kind of piece him up with that jab and with the kicks he's able to throw, just with the reach advantage that Adesanya is going to have. So we'll see. I think the wrestling can play a factor, but honestly, I think Izzy, he did a decent job early in the fight stopping the takedowns from Dricus. The 2nd round obviously was a little bit difficult for him, but like in the 1st and 3rd rounds, I mean, he stuffs all the takedowns Dricus does throw at him. That 4th round, obviously, again, Izzy was kind of wobbled, kind of stunned, and obviously I think he was kind of running out of gas as well, just because Dricus, is always in your face. I mean, obviously, Dricus found a way to the back and just dragged Adesanya down. I don't know if Imavov is going to be able to entirely do that. Like the last fight, this fight has the potential to be very boring too. Let's just be honest. I mean, that's not me hating on Izzy. That's just kind of how Izzy fights go sometimes, when Adesanya is the better fighter and the other guy is not really willing to engage because Adesanya is winning, and it's kind of hard. Like, all right, how do I manage this distance? How do I crash here? How do I, again, find that shot to get me in range? Because if I do crash inside, if I do look to get in, Adesanya is probably going to hit me with the hook, or he's going to just, keep jabbing my face. This fight has the potential to do that. We'll see how Imavov sets up his takedowns. I wouldn't be too confident in that. The other factor in this fight, Adesanya is 35 years old. Adesanya is 35. He's coming off back-to-back losses. Yeah, that's a thing. It's more than a thing. Adesanya hasn't won a fight since 2023, where it was a fight that it was maybe the pinnacle of his career. He finally got the win over Alex Pereira, and he got it via the knockout. I mean, that was, as good as it's ever going to get for Adesanya, legitimately. I mean, when he beat Pereira and did the arrows, I mean, who would have thought he'd be in the position where he's at now? I mean, he was a minus 700 favorite to beat Sean Strickland in Australia, and now look at him. He loses to Dricus. Obviously, again, they have, they've buried the hatchet, him and Duplessis, but, a very, emotional fight for Adesanya, fighting for Africa or whatnot, and he loses. He loses a big fight in a fight that he shouldn't have been in. He didn't deserve a title fight against Dricus, but he got it and he lost. What is he going to be coming off back-to-back losses at 35 years old? I still think he beats Nassourdine. It's not like I don't think Izzy's going to all of a sudden become slow. He didn't look that slow in the Dricus fight. I thought he looked good. I think Dricus won because Dricus is just that good. Dricus is a world kickboxing champion. Dricus beats a lot of guys in the UFC. Again, Dricus is the world champion for a reason. So I don't think entirely Izzy's washed up. We'll see. But everything, again, that we know about Israel Adesanya and everything that we've seen out of Nassourdine Imavov does kind of scream that Izzy should win the fight. He should. Adesanya is a minus 170 favorite. Imavov plus 140. If everything goes the way we expect it to go, obviously it doesn't always go that way in mixed martial arts, but if everything goes the way we think it's going to go, Israel Adesanya should be able to piece up Nassourdine Imavov, and he should win the fight by decision. I would expect it to look kind of like the Jared Cannonier fight, just that Imavov will shoot a couple more times than Jared did. But that's kind of how I expect this fight to play out. So give me Israel Adesanya to beat Nassourdine Imavov, and he'll do it by unanimous decision. So folks, thank y'all for watching our UFC Fight Night Riyadh, Saudi Arabia predictions with Israel Adesanya and Nassourdine Imavov in the main event in the middleweight division. If you have not yet though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video. Make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. We'll be back next week for our UFC, oh god, what number pay-per-view is that? I don't even know. UFC 312? Yes, 312 predictions. Dricus Duplessis, Sean Strickland in the main event from New South Wales, Australia. Co-main event, huge spot for the strawweight belt. Zhang Weili versus Tatiana Suarez. Suarez finally gets her shot at the belt in her 10th professional fight. We'll get to that one next week, folks. Thank y'all for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. And Mamba forever.